Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Tent of Abraham. I'm Tamir Kreisman from Israel, and this is Parashat Beshalach, Exodus 13:17 to 17:16. This one's called Crybaby. So I hope you guys managed to catch last week's teaching, as we're not slowing down here at all. Egypt has been completely and utterly decimated. The most powerful empire on earth at the time was reduced to nothing more than an army at this point, and even they're going to be taken out soon enough, we'll see. Their grain and their livestock gone, their economy demolished, their firstborn sons murdered, their spirit broken. Now, if I didn't just say that I was talking about Egypt, you'd think that I was speaking of the Israelites under the Egyptian rule. Their grain and livestock gone, their economy demolished, their sons murdered, their spirit broken. So what do we learn from this? If nothing more than that God's justice is perfect. Now, the reason that this is so important to remember is that just like we read here that God's word is true and will never return to him void, just as the sun is faithful to always rise in the east and set in the west, so too will God's perfect will be done. Now, I need you to remember this. Just like God needed Israel to know this. And why? Because this is a difference between faith and trust. We've discussed this plenty of times before. This is another prime example. Guess what? In this world, though, you need them both. Saying, I have faith that God exists, but I don't trust that he will provide for me according to his word is absolutely meaningless. If you have faith in God, then by default you trust him. But if you don't trust God to take care of all your needs and that everything that is either coming to you or withheld from you is for your benefit, then guess what, my friend? You do not have faith in God. Now, if you scramble and if you cry like a baby every time you don't get your way, you do not have faith in God. Or you need to strengthen your faith. Now, that's okay. Don't worry. We all go through this. All of us. Some periods of our lives are more difficult than others, and some days we just need to vent. Okay, I recall some of my darkest moments when there was no one to talk to because there was no one who could comprehend what I've been through or what I was going through. And when everyone thought me to be completely insane, yes, that's right, that happened to me. You know what I did? Well, nothing. I broke. Or more specifically, he broke me. And today, I have to say this. Before God and you all, I am grateful for it. I'm a better man because of it. You guys know that song by REM, Everybody Hurts? Listen to the lyrics right now. They almost get it. Almost. When your day is long and the night is yours alone. When you're sure you've had enough of this life, well, hang on. Don't let yourself go, because everybody cries and everybody hurts sometimes. Sometimes everything is wrong. Now it's time to sing along. When your day is night alone. Hold on, hold on. If you feel like letting go, hold on. If you think you've had too much of this life, well, hang on, because everybody hurts. Take comfort in your friends. Everybody hurts. Okay, so it's a beautiful song. It's about solidarity and empathy within the darkest places, or so that's my interpretation of it. To each their own. But the reason I say they almost got it is because what happens if you cannot take comfort in your friends? Because your friends are people too, and your friends struggle in their own way, just like you. You think you're special in this aspect? I'm sorry. You're not. You are not special when it comes to problems. Not in this way. Everybody hurts, right? Because I guarantee you, whatever troubles you're going through or that you think you're going through today, I don't care what it is. Now, please, I mean no disrespect. You have not suffered like Israel has suffered under Pharaoh in Egypt. Most of us live in the Western world today, and we have the privileges of free choice, free speech, food packaged in stores. We don't have to go out and hunt or gather. Indoor plumbing, let's be real, it's one of the greatest inventions ever. You guys see the City of David video? You know what I'm talking about. But it all comes down, all of this, it comes down to one question. And that is, what are you gonna do about it? So, shall we explore the answer together? Hava Nagila. Let's go. It came to pass when Pharaoh let the people go. Drop the mic. What was the title of last week's video? Master of Puppets, right? God could have just snapped his fingers and everything would have fallen into place. But after so many times of pleading and giving opportunities with Pharaoh, who hardened his heart towards God, towards Moses and Aaron and the children of Israel, no more. His free will was removed from him. This is where they all said, "Let my people go," to which Pharaoh replied, "Make me." And so we read, and it came to pass when Pharaoh let the people go. See what I'm saying? So, who's the puppet now? Need I say more? But then there's something very peculiar going on here in the first few words of the verse. The children of Israel are not called the children of Israel, nor are they called Israel or the Hebrews or the Israelites or even my people, but rather the people. There are a few reasons for this. We know that 600,000 men, not including women and children, left Egypt. So the sum total of the Israelites was around 2 million people. Now, verse 18. So God led the people around by the way of the desert to the Red Sea, and the children of Israel were armed when they went out of Egypt. You see the discrepancy? We got the people and then the children of Israel, chamushim, were arms. Were armed. So the Hebrew says chamushim, not necessarily armed. Chamush does actually mean armed, but it also spells the word chamishim, which means 50 or a fifth, chamishit. So why a fifth? Because only a fifth of Israel that were in Egypt left Egypt. The rest chose to stay. They couldn't make it out. They were too far gone after everything that happened, which means that out of 10 million Israelites in Egypt, only 2 million left. And on the flip side, why they were called the people and not my people or any other variation of Israel is because the children of Israel themselves made up a fifth of the Exodus, meaning that there were 10 million people in total who left, but only a fifth of those 2 million were Israel, while the other 8 were Egypt and the nations. The rest they were a mixed multitude of Egyptians. But all the other nations that gathered in Egypt. Remember, Egypt was the capital of the world at the time, just like Babylon. Babel was the capital of the world during the days of Nimrod. So essentially, the people who represented the entire world were witnesses to what went down in Egypt. This is how the whole world saw when it just took place in Egypt. It wasn't only the Egyptians, it was all the inhabitants of the land of Egypt as well. From Jasher. And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Sukkot, about 600,000 men on foot, besides the little ones and their wives. Also, a mixed multitude went up with them, and the flocks and herds, even much cattle. And the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in the land of Egypt in hard labor was 210 years. And at the end of 210 years, the Lord brought forth the children of Israel from Egypt with a strong hand. Now remember what we discussed. The 400-year countdown began with the birth of Isaac, but that's why you see the numbers 430 and 400. Again, I say this so you guys won't get any funny ideas. God told this to Abraham that this would happen 30 years before Isaac was born. Abraham was 70 years at the time of the covenant of the pieces. This is when God brought the sleep upon him and he said, in 400 years from your descendants. So in other words, 30 plus 400. Okay, so it started with Isaac. When was Isaac born? Isaac was born on Passover Eve. That's when the angel came to Abraham and said, in 1 year's time, your wife is going to have a son. And then 400 years later to the day, Erev Pesach. Hey, this is the Exodus. This is the Seder. This is when it happened. So this fulfills another prophecy. Now in the very next verse, verse 19, another prophecy is being fulfilled. Moses took Joseph's bones with him, for he, Joseph, had adjourned the sons of Israel, saying, God will surely remember you, and you shall bring up my bones from here with you. I'm going to read this in Hebrew, and if you join me for the last 2 or 3 teachings, basically from the book of Exodus, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, because this is also, they're prophecies within prophecies over here. Vaikach Moshe et atzmot Yosef. Moses took atzamot, the bones of Yosef, imo, with him. Ki heshvia. He made them swear 7 times 7. Et bnei Israel, the children of Israel, le'emor, to say, pakod ifkod Elohim etchem. This was the code that God told Joseph to give to the children of Israel, to then, Moses would come along and say this code even though he couldn't close his mouth, pakod ifkod, and so on and so forth. Ve'eletem et atzmotai, and you will raise my bones from this with you. In other words, you cannot leave without my bones. So, as we discussed in teaching 2 weeks ago. Now, just something I want to throw at you right here, which are the last 2 verses of the chapter. It has been widely debated as to the location of Mount Sinai. Okay, so how they left, when they left, and so on and so forth. This is just an extra thing. The thing is, Mount Sinai has actually been found, and it's not in the Sinai Peninsula between Israel and Egypt to the south and southwest. The Sinai Desert came way later. What was found is a mountain that the very top of it is completely charred, like sulfur, as in, and the top of Mount Sinai was on fire, only the top of the mountain. While at the foot of the mountain, they found 12 pillars and altars with ancient Hebrew writings and symbolisms on them. Furthermore, right there in the vicinity was the strangest looking rock that scientists claim was split in half because water shot up from inside of it. Furthermore, deep-sea divers and explorers found golden chariots in the bottom of the Red Sea parallel to this location. And the last furthermore in this regard is that, and this is all, again, what side is this? This is in Saudi Arabia, right below Jordan in Saudi Arabia. The Saudi government has gated off this area from perpetrators, and everyone who trespasses will be arrested or shot, who knows. And they're closing the whole thing down, and they're making like an Area 51 type of place. Now, this makes perfect sense. I mean, could you imagine? This would flip the world on its head. They found the actual location to Mount Sinai with Jewish remnants right at the foot of the mountain. That's where it took place. And if that's real, that means all the other pagan things all around, all the other religions, no. So, while many claim that reaching the Red Sea from their location in Goshen was too far, I say, no way, Jose. I did a basic Google Maps thingy. You could see how long it would take to get from point A to point B if you do the walking thing. It roughly shows how long it would take to walk from the west of Sinai, even a little bit more west, which is where the land of Goshen was, to the east, right at that spot. And you know how long it said it would take just by walking? 54 to 66 hours. That's it. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to cause it to lead them on the way, and at night a pillar of fire to give them light. Thus they could travel day and night. They walked for 72 hours, 3 days straight, and camped out by the Red Sea. That's what it says. It makes perfect sense. Now you may be thinking, yeah, but how are you going to move 2 million people in that amount of time? Surely it would take longer. Now, do you understand that they moved in perfect, orderly fashion? Tribe by tribe? They were having a Seder after all, which literally translates to order. Even the sea that split did not only split in 2, it split into 12. Each tribe went down their own path while it says that the water rose between the 2 of them. The waters actually froze. It's a whole nother study, but we don't have time for that today. In any case, this is just a fun side note. So let's get back. So the children of Israel were encamped by the sea, very specifically according to the instructions of God. He said, go right there, like right before there, because again, you still have to move a little bit more. And then God tells Moses the following. And Pharaoh will say about the children of Israel, they are trapped in the land. God is telling Moses, this is what Pharaoh is going to say. They're trapped in the land. The desert has closed in upon them. Now, at this point, God is using Israel as bait, both for their benefit and for the sake of taking out Egypt and for the sake of God's glory. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart. This is what he tells Moses. And he will pursue them. And I will be glorified through Pharaoh and through his entire force. And the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. And they did so. In other words, God is telling Moses exactly what's going to happen. Now, this is called favor. This is called mercy within judgment. Judgment for Egypt and mercy for Israel. This is Hashem. It was reported to Pharaoh that the people had fled. And Pharaoh and his servants had a change of heart towards the people. And they said, what is this that we have done, that we have released Israel from serving us? So it said it was reported to Pharaoh. So who reported it to Pharaoh? What, was it the Holy Spirit? No. Let's read the Midrash. And the children of Israel traveled from Egypt and from Goshen and from Ramses and encamped in Sukkot on the 15th day of the first month. And the Egyptians buried all their firstborn whom the Lord had smitten, and all the Egyptians buried their slain for 3 days. And the children of Israel traveled from Sukkot and encamped in Etom at the end of the wilderness. And on the third day, after the Egyptians had buried their firstborn, many men rose up from Egypt and went after Israel to make them return to Egypt. This is before Pharaoh. For they repented that they had sent the Israelites away from their servitude. And one man said to his neighbor, surely Moses and Aaron spoke to Pharaoh, saying, we will go a 3 days journey in the wilderness and sacrifice to the Lord our God. Right? That's all we heard. 3 days. Just let us go out 3 days and we'll be back. No problem. You know why 3 days would have done it? 3 days, Mount Sinai, they received the Torah. The world is destroyed all except for Israel. That was the original plan. So if that, it's a good thing that did not happen, because then the whole world would have been destroyed. Same thing with the golden calf. If they would have received the Torah without the sin of the golden calf, which was actually caused by the mixed multitude, the world would have been destroyed except for Israel. So again, you're welcome. Now, therefore, let us rise up early in the morning and cause them to return. And it shall be that if they return with us to Egypt to their masters, then shall we know that there is faith in them. But if they will not return, then we will fight with them and make them come back with great power and a strong hand. And all the nobles of Pharaoh, the generals and noblemen, rose up in the morning, and with them about 700,000 men. And they went forth from Egypt on that day and came to the place where the children of Israel were. And all the Egyptians saw, and behold, Moses and Aaron and all the children of Israel were sitting before Pi Ha-Chirot, eating and drinking and celebrating the feast of the Lord. And all the Egyptians said to the children of Israel, surely you said, we will go up a journey for 3 days in the wilderness and sacrifice to our God and return. Something had to happen, though, at the end of those 3 days that did not happen. And again, it wasn't about God, it was about the children of Israel. What did they miss? We'll see. Now, therefore, this day makes 5 days since you went. Why do you not return to your masters? And Moses and Aaron answered them, saying, because the Lord our God has testified in us, saying, you shall no more return to Egypt. That time is over. But we will betake ourselves to a land flowing with milk and honey, as the Lord our God has sworn to our ancestors to give to us. And when the nobles of Egypt saw that the children of Israel did not hearken to them to return to Egypt, they girded themselves to fight with Israel. And the Lord strengthened the hearts of the children of Israel over the Egyptians, and they gave them a severe beating. And the battle was sore upon the Egyptians, and all the Egyptians fled from before the children of Israel, for many of them perished by the hand of Israel. And the nobles of Pharaoh went to Egypt and told Pharaoh, saying, the children of Israel have fled and will no more return to Egypt. And in this manner did Moses and Aaron speak to us. So, who told Pharaoh? It was the nobles of Egypt. Now again, this was the plan all along. Otherwise, the sea would have split. They could have moved on. But that's exactly where God told them to stay. Stay right there. We're going to send some people. Oh, okay, they're there. We're going to go tell Pharaoh. And now here we go. We're preparing for the big show. It was reported to Pharaoh that the people had fled, and Pharaoh and his servants had a change of heart towards the people. So he, Pharaoh, verse 6, harnessed his chariot and took his people with him. He harnessed his own chariot. The most powerful man alive does not harness his own chariot. But this is the same thing like, and Abraham rose early in the morning and harnessed his own donkey because the task was important. Pharaoh was like a rabid dog at this point. All he could see was red. He knew that there was nowhere to go, so that was it. He did this himself. Now, why did God allow all this to happen? Why did he have to make Pharaoh and Egypt pursue Israel? He destroyed their country. Why did he have to then bring them out in order to destroy everything that was left, all their army? Egypt was the source of darkness in the entire world at the time. And it was like a black hole growing and spreading and swallowing everything in its path. Everything would just go down there and get sucked into the darkness. The nations gathered from across the globe to partake of its riches, and everyone benefited in the physical sense, except for Israel. So, all except for Israel. Is Israel not God's firstborn son, as he claims? Of course he is. Of course they are. And yet God used his beloved firstborn son to abolish his darkness. But as a result, they had to suffer tremendously. And we still do until the end of time. We are destined. Let there be no mistake over here as to who the suffering servant actually is. Moses stood between God and Israel today stands between the world and oblivion. Again, you're welcome. He took 600 selected chariots and all the chariots of Egypt with officers over them all. Why does the verse say 600,000 selected chariots? Was this a coincidence? How many men left Egypt? 600,000, right? Also called in biblical Hebrew, Shishim Ribo. Now we learned this from the teaching of the death of Moses, that he was equal to Shishim Ribo, so said the angel Gabriel, meaning Moses was equal to all of Israel. Now these selected chariots that Pharaoh was bringing to destroy Israel matched the significance of their spiritual numbers, 1 to 1,000. Did Pharaoh know exactly how many men left? No, he did not. But at this point, it was no longer him who was making the decisions anymore. We're talking about principalities right now. He was given over to the darkness, and he is no more than a pawn at this point, or a puppet in God's plan of glory. The Egyptians chased after them and overtook them, encamped by the sea, every horse of Pharaoh's chariots, his horsemen, and his force, besides what does it say? Pi hacherot lifnei Baal Tzafon, in front of Baal Zephon, right? So these are 3 legions coming at Israel and surrounding them. Pharaoh's chariots, his horsemen, the cavalry, and his force, infantry, okay? Chariots, cavalry, and infantry. And the cherry on top is that another one of their deities was residing in a mountain called Har Tzafon, and this would be Baal. Right? It's called Baal Tzafon, Yoshev al Har Tzafon. Har Tzafon, or Yechete Tzafon Kirat Melechav. Anyway, sorry, the Psalm. So, look at what God does right here. He corners Israel on all sides. Why are there 3? Box them in, right? Israel, you got the sea, 1, 2, 3. There's nowhere to go right now. On all sides, the Egyptians are coming at them. It's about dusk. He boasts their confidence. God boasts the Egyptians' confidence by making sure that the place where they gathered was right next to the pagan site, while every last able body from Egypt is standing over them. Israel is now in a kill box. And just so you understand the gravity of the situation, Jasher says, and Pharaoh rose up and harnessed his chariots, and he ordered all the Egyptians to assemble. Not one man was left, excepting the little ones and the women. All the men, every able body who could lift a sword left Egypt. This was the final thing right now. So it wasn't enough that all your firstborns are done. Everyone else is about to be done too. And all the Egyptians went forth with Pharaoh to pursue the children of Israel. And the camp of Egypt was exceedingly large and heavy camp, about 1,000,000 men. What's 1,000,000 men? You just add the 0 because they didn't have a million back then. So it's 10, 100,000. What's 100,000? 100,000 is how many zeros? It's 5 zeros, 10. Add the 0. We're talking about 1,000,000 men, heavily armed, filled with the wrath of the Egyptians who were not looking to bring Israel back. They were coming to kill them. So don't forget, they just buried their own firstborn sons. There was darkness indeed. This is the worst situation God could have set up for Israel. But you have to ask yourself, why? What's God teaching them here? And what is he teaching us as well? Pharaoh drew near. This is back in our Parsha, verse 10. Pharaoh drew near, and the children of Israel lifted their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were advancing after them. They were very frightened, and the children of Israel cried out to the Lord. Here we go. Vaitzaku, tzaka, screamed. Upar'o hikriv, this is what it says, translated to, and Pharaoh drew near. Now, we discussed this specifically last year in the teaching. Listen to last year's teaching. And we said that the Hebrew is that of a sacrifice more so than to draw near. Yes, he did draw near, but in the process, what happened? Two things happened. Last year, we only discussed one. Now we're going to discuss the other. Par'o hitkarev is the proper way to say he drew near. But the way to sacrifice an offering in Hebrew is the same way that it's written here. Hikriv korban, ufar'o hikriv. So we already determined that Pharaoh would ultimately chase Israel into the sea, knowing that he wasn't getting out alive. This whole thing was a suicide mission, sacrificing himself just to kill Moses, or at least one of them, but primarily Moses. But what we didn't discuss is that if we read these words in Hebrew like this, Ufar'o hikriv vaisu bnei Israel, exactly how it's written in the Hebrew, we get, and Pharaoh lifted up and sacrificed the children of Israel. And that's what God wanted him to do, for the benefit of Israel. Vayir'u me'od, what happened? Vayir'u me'od vayitzaku bnei Israel el Adonai. As a result that Pharaoh drew near, or rather sacrificed, he pushed them closer to God. They were very frightened, that's what happened, and the children of Israel cried out to the Lord. So here it is. They finally did the right thing. They could have done this 2 days ago. Now, did God actually take their free will away and physically make them cry out to him? Did God instill fear in their hearts? No and no. What did God say? I'm going to use Pharaoh to glorify my name and his army to glorify my name. I'm using him as a puppet. He's no more than a puppet right now. So, what was this response? What was the response that we wanted out of them? The power of prayer as a nation. In times of the end, if you will. And again, we're talking, think everything we're saying here, think end times. When did God answer the call? In Exodus 3:7, remember? And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people. That's great that I saw them. Okay, I see the affliction. And I have heard their cry because of their slave drivers, for I know their pains. It's only when I heard them. I have descended to rescue them from the hands of the Egyptians and to bring them up from that land to a good and spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey. That's wonderful that God sees your pain. But you need to cry out to him, and then he will respond. But not just any cry. This had to be a cry that would shake the foundations of all creation. And now behold, the cry of the children of Israel has come to me. God is still telling Moses way back when. And I have also seen the oppression that the Egyptians are oppressing them. So now come, and I will send you to Pharaoh and to take my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt. So, what's the difference now? Well, this is the grand finale, my friends. Well, as far as he's concerned anyway, this is the crescendo. But then what happens? Instead of focusing on God, they're crying out. Great, that's a fantastic start. You cry out, let God do his thing. Not in this case. Instead of focusing on God, what do? They turn to Moses and they start saying some stupid things. The kind of things that most of us might say when we are squeezed, and not to mention shifting the blame from ourselves to our surroundings. Look what they said to Moses. They said to Moses, verse 11, "It is because there are no graves in Egypt that you, Moses, have taken us to die in the desert? What is this that you have done to us to take us out of Egypt?" Whew. Isn't this the thing about which we spoke to you in Egypt, saying, "Leave us alone, and we will serve the Egyptians, because we would rather serve the Egyptians than die in the desert?" To which Moses says the following, which is broken down into 4 sections. I mean, you see where they went wrong here, right? Can we relate to this? I can relate to this on a personal level too. Moses said to the people, "Don't be afraid. Stand firm and see the Lord's salvation that he will wreak for you today. For the way you have seen the Egyptians is only today, but you shall no longer continue to see them for eternity. Ad olam, forever. The Lord will fight for you, but you shall remain silent, or you shall hold your peace." Last week we discussed tacharishun, lahacharish, as in cheresh, deaf. Close out this noise all around you. Don't focus on the noise around you. Focus on God. You cried out. Let him do his thing. What happens on the ground is as follows. This is fascinating. Okay. "And on account of the Egyptians, the children of Israel divided themselves into 4 divisions when they were being squeezed." 4. "And they were divided in their opinions, for they were afraid of the Egyptians, and Moses spoke to each of them." Going back to these verses. The first division was of the children of Reuben, Simeon, and Issachar, and they resolved to cast themselves into the sea, for they were exceedingly afraid of the Egyptians. They chose suicide. And Moses said to them, "Fear not, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will effect this day for you," as it says in the verse. "Al tirau, hitiatzvu ure'u et yeshuat Adonai, asher yaseh lachem hayom." The second division was the children of Zebulun, Benjamin, and Naphtali. And they resolved to go back to Egypt with the Egyptians. Surrender, let's go back as slaves. And Moses said to them, "Fear not, for as you have seen the Egyptians this day, so you shall never see them forevermore. Ki asher ra'item et hamitzrim hayom, lo tosifu lirotam ad olam." Od ad olam. The third division was of the children of Judah and Joseph, right? The 2 kings. And they resolved to go meet the Egyptians to fight with them. They chose battle. What did Moses say? Moses said to them, "Stand your places, for the Lord will fight for you, and you shall remain silent. Adonai lachem lachem," or rather, the Lord will fight for you, particularly for this one. And the 4th division was the children of Levi, Gad, and Asher, and they resolved to go into the midst of the Egyptians to confound them. They chose confusion, like they would get mixed up if they would just run in the middle, overwhelm them and whatnot. And Moses said to them, "Remain in your stations. Atem tacharishun, you hold your peace, you be silent, and fear not. Only call unto the Lord that he may save you out of their hands. Va'atem tacharishun." So let's take a survey or an opinion over here. Which one of these 4 do you think is the right course of action? Suicide, surrender, battle, or confusion? Anybody? Anybody? I mean, what's the most proactive thing here, right? Okay, so let's rule out suicide. Let's rule out surrender. So we got battle or we have confusion. I don't know what confusion is for, so let's go with battle, okay? If we could all agree on that. But the answer is, none of them is the right answer. Every time the children of Israel attempt to do anything, now listen to me and hear what I'm saying right now. Every time the children of Israel attempt to do anything, they are boxed in with nowhere to go. What do they get told? To be cool. Has anyone ever told you to relax while you're freaking out? Does it ever work? Of course it doesn't work. It kind of causes the, "I am relaxed. Calm down, don't you?" We all know this. We've been there on both ends. What exactly do you think you're going to do by your own might and by your own power, son? You're out of your element here. You think the Egyptians are after you? No, son. They came for me. I killed their sons. I destroyed their country. The Lord will fight for you, but you shall remain silent. This is not between them and you. This is between me and them and me. And between verses 14 and 15, Moses rose up from amidst the people, and he prayed to the Lord and said, we discussed this last week, O Lord of the whole earth, save now the people whom thou didst bring forth from Egypt, and let not the Egyptians boast that the power and might is theirs. In other words, God, if you let Egypt take out Israel right now, the Egyptians are going to boast. You're going to lose your glory. This can't be. The power of prayer as a nation with laser focus on one thing, God, save us. The Lord said to Moses, why do you cry out to me? Speak to the children of Israel. Vais'u. Daber b'nei Israel vais'u. Tell them to move. Why did God originally say that he wants them for 3 days and 3 nights, as we discussed? Why did they actually have to walk for 3 days and 3 nights? First of all, it's because they had to distance themselves from the spiritual restriction that was Egypt. But second, in order for them to be brought to a place where they had nowhere to go, nothing left to do, and no hope of salvation other than God himself personally. So where else do we see something like this? A full 3 days and nights attempting to flee from darkness only to be thrown into a deeper darkness to which there is no other salvation than that of the Master of the universe. Hold your breath. We're going underwater for this one. Please turn with me to the book of Jonah, chapter 2, starting in verse 1. And the Lord appointed a huge fish to swallow up Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. Vayeman Adonai dag gadol, dag, fish gadol, big livloa, to swallow et Yonah. Vayehi Yonah b'me'ei, in the belly hadag, shlosha yamim, days, ushlosha leilot, nights. And the Lord appointed a huge fish to swallow up Jonah. We, as well as Jonah, might have seen this as a very, very bad thing, a punishment of sorts. I mean, he likens the belly of the fish to Sheol, after all, right? We're going to read this. But guess what? That big fish was sent there in order to save and protect Jonah. How long can a man survive adrift at sea by himself in the water, treading water? Okay, we don't even have a Titanic on the doors situation over here. If he doesn't drown first, he's going to get chewed up by all the other fish. Now, Rabbi Shimon says that the fish was sent for his benefit because he would be concealed within it. As soon as Jonah was swallowed whole and brought to the belly of the fish, Jonah saw its belly, the breadth of its entrails, which was a large chamber. Jonah was taken into a large chamber in the belly of the fish. Check this. This is trippy. And the 2 eyes of the fish were brightly illuminating like the sun. There was a precious stone within its entrails that shone for him, and he saw everything, existing in the sea and in its depths. All this seems pretty fascinating, now doesn't it? Does it seem like Jonah is suffering? Could you imagine maybe there was a fright at first, but then you get taken into this large, comfortable chamber. The eyes of the fish are shining as bright as the sun, and the fish is taking you and showing you all the depths of the ocean. We didn't see that today, and he was comfortable with the shining stone inside. So he wasn't suffering. He's seeing things firsthand that no man alive has ever seen before. We know what do we know? About like 10 to 15% of our ocean. That's how much we managed to cover. That's nothing. Jonah just saw its depths and secrets. and was sustained by the grace of God for 3 days and 3 nights. Just as the verse says. So why would he cry out to God if everything is all good? He's clearly in a place that's sort of within space and time, but he's being sustained. Why would we cry out to God if everything is all good? So, when does he actually cry out to God? Verse 2. And Jonah prayed to the Lord his God from the belly of the fish. Vayitpalel Yonah El Adonai Elohav. Here's your recognition. Now, it says Mimei ha-daga. First it said dag, but now it says daga. You want to know why? Because the fish is sleeping with the fishes now. The fish is dead, baby. The fish is dead. We can see this from the first plague that hit Egypt. Vehadaga asher bayeor meta. And the fish, daga, that were in the Nile died. So now we have our boy Jonah sitting in the belly of the fish, and the lights have gone out, and the walls are caving in, and he's sinking to the bottom of the ocean in the carcass of the fish. In the meantime, the rest of the marine life are getting ready for some, sushi buffet over there, while our prophet is still inside. Now Jonah cries out. Vayomer, karati metzara li el Adonai, vaya'aneni, mi beten Sheol shavati shamata koli. And he said, and even listen to the tense, I called out from my distress to the Lord, and he answered. This already happened. This is in the past. And he answered me. From the belly of the grave I cried out, or Sheol I cried out. You heard my voice. Now, what does it say in Hebrew? Vayomer karati mitzara. Mitzara is, I called out of my distress. Mitzara. But do you remember, we learned about the root of the name Egypt. Mitzrayim comes from the word metzar. Min ha-metzar karati ya. David said, min ha-metzar, from the restriction or from the strait. I called out to God, to Yah, which means the straits, as in the narrow. That's literally what it means. So Jonah's distress is literally the narrow place that he's in. It's getting smaller and smaller. Now try and imagine the sheer terror of where he's at right now. And all this happened after the fish showed him the entire ocean for 3 full days and nights. Then the fish died because it could not tolerate him anymore. This dude's in my belly. Rabbi Elazar said, when Jonah saw all the space inside the fish, he rejoiced. Hey, this is pretty cushy right here. But then God said, oh, no. Do you think that this is the reason that I brought you here? So God killed the fish, which is when things got a bit claustrophobic, if you will. And that's when he cried out. Now, at the end of chapter 2, after he pleads for his life and makes all the promises, if God will save him and give him another chance at fulfilling his mission, we read, but I, with a voice of thanks, will I sacrifice to you. What I vowed I will pay for the salvation of the Lord. All these promises are not the focus or the point of what we need to learn from this. That's not why God got Jonah out of this. Says, God, I promise I'll do this and that. That's not what happened. He cried out to the Lord his God. There's recognition. You put me here. All those things, all these other pleads, they came later. All these promises, they came later. But at this point, the focus and the lesson is on this. We're back at verse 3. And he said, I called out from my distress. Where did Jonah call out from? Mitzara. I called out from my distress. To who? To the Lord. And did he answer you? And he answered me. Amen. How far gone do you have to be and still be given the chance to cry out to God? From the belly of the grave I cried out. Can God hear you from all the way down there? You heard my voice. Let's read the verse again. And he said, I called out from my distress to the Lord, and he answered me. From the belly of the grave I cried out. You heard my voice. So this is not about crying out. This is about recognition of where you are and why you have been put there. You are there because God put you there. Recognize where you are. I'm talking to all of you. Every last one of you. Jonah gave recognition to God that he placed him in the belly of the fish. Read verse 4. And you cast me into the deep, in the heart of the seas, and a river surrounded me. All your breakers and all your waves passed over me. God, I recognize that you put me here. And I said, I have been driven away from before your eyes. Indeed, I will continue to gaze upon your holy temple. But I'm not giving up on you, Lord. I know you put me here. Water has surrounded me. Even to the soul, the deep encompassed me. The Red Sea hangs over my head. Now, again, it doesn't say the Red Sea. It says Yesoveveni Suf Chavush Leroshi. So, Suf, like Yam Suf, the Sea of Reeds, but it can also read as Sof, Samech Vav Pesofit, as in meaning the end hangs over my head. I'm about to die. To the bottom of the mountains I descended. Oh yes, there's mountains underneath. Remember, after the flood, everything changed. The earth, its bars are closed on before me, but you brought up my life from Gehenom. O Lord, my God. Yeah. This happened. This already happened. He was already brought up. When my soul grew faint upon me, I remembered the Lord, and my prayer came to you, to your holy temple. Those who keep worthless futilities abandon their kindness, but I, with a voice of thanks, will I sacrifice to you what I vowed I will pay for the salvation of the Lord. And when Jonah gave heed and recognition as to where he was, why he was there, and who placed him there, meaning he prayed to and from the place to which he was specifically bound. What happened next? And the Lord said to the fish, and it spewed Jonah out onto dry land. Vayomer Adonai ladag vayakeh. He threw him up. Et Yonah el hayabasha. The Lord speaks to the living, not the dead. God spoke, the fish revived. How do we know this? Because now it's not the daga, which is dead, it's back to the dag, which was alive. God immediately revives the fish as it began to ascend and spat Jonah on dry land as a testimony for all to see. And so, then the children of Israel came into the midst of the sea on dry land, and the waters were to them as a wall from their right and from their left. Kids, this is a very important element that I would urge you all to add to your prayer life, okay? I'm doing this myself. And what this does, it brings elevated levels of awareness, God awareness. You think the 613 mitzvot are for nothing? Think about it for a minute, okay? If you bless God for everything, because there's literally a blessing for everything. Everything you eat, everything you drink, things that you smell, if you see a sunrise and a sunset, if you see a rainbow, if you see a beautiful tree, if you go into the ocean, if you relieve yourself. Yeah, like thanks for making the necessary holes in my body. Not only there, but also here so I can breathe, so I can see, so I can hear. You understand? We give God thanks to everything all the time. By doing this, you are always God conscious, and so you are constantly aligned with Him. And now, if this is the case, then you not only have faith that God hears you, but you trust that where you are at that very moment, be it in the depths of the pit, you have been placed there by He who you trust, because He put you there, and He will get you out of there. To me personally, I love the example of Psalms 130. Shir Hama'alot Mima'amakim Karaticha Adonai. A song of ascent from the depths I have called you, O Lord. David, the man after God's own heart, recognizes exactly where he is and who put him there. He calls him God. He didn't call to God. He calls him, you are my God. From here you are my God. Just like Jonah said, he prayed to his Elohav. He prayed to his God, which is God. And so he mentions the place, David, where in the depths, mima'amakim karaticha, Adonai. When I'm down here in the lowest point on earth, I call to God and say, you are my God, even down here. O Lord, now hearken to my voice. May your ears be attentive to the voice of my supplication versus recognition. Then there's a request. He not only has faith that God has a plan, which is why he put him there to begin with, but he trusts that God will also hear his earnest cry and have him ascend from the depths. This is why it's called a song of ascents, and there are several of these. You see, it's all about moving higher, whether it's higher from where you are or if it's higher from lower of where you should be. So Israel cried out, and God answered the cry. At that moment, there was no need to do or say anything else. Just move. Because what's the point of prayer if you don't believe anyone's listening? That's why where your prayers go depends entirely on you. Thank God that Israel had Moses to lead them. I could have thousands and thousands of hours to try and teach this stuff, and still, I personally cannot comprehend the magnitude of this dude, Moses. So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and towards morning the sea returned to its strength, as the Egyptians were fleeing towards it, not away, towards it. And the Lord stirred the Egyptians into the sea. But the Hebrew does not say the Egyptians. The Hebrew says Egypt. Vayinaer Adonai, Vayinaer Sheikh Adonai et Mitzrayim, not et ha-Mitzrim, the Egyptians, Mitzrayim, betoch hayam, in the sea. God is about to finish off the spirit of darkness, crippling it for all time until its last day, when time is no more. On that day, that's that day, the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians. But again, this is the English, miyad, from the hand of Egypt. And Israel saw, I'm just going to translate it straight, and Israel saw Egypt dead on the seashore. Vayera Israel et Mitzrayim met al sfat hayam. Because God was so close to them during these times, to Israel, they actually saw, they beheld the spiritual manifestation of Egypt, the restriction, dead, destroyed right before their very eyes. And Israel saw the great hand which the Lord had used upon the Egyptians. Again, Asher asa Adonai b'Mitzrayim, on Egypt, vayir'u ha'am et Adonai, and the people feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and in Moses, his servant. But none of this could have happened if Israel did not move forward. And within this mighty judgment, that of which the world had not seen until this very day, is a beautiful spark of hope. Who's the number one bad guy in this story? It's Pharaoh, right? At the last moment, when Pharaoh himself was underwater, sinking to the bottom of the sea, he cried out to God. He was given an opportunity, just like all of us are. He retracted his earlier statement to Moses, saying that, who is this God? I don't know no God. I don't know no Yud He Vav He. Now he did. Now he gave recognition. And even the wicked Pharaoh, the oppressor of Israel, was created in the likeness and image of God. And when he called to God, Pharaoh, when he called to God from the depths, God answered. God forgave Pharaoh, and he plucked him out of the hands of death. He immediately transported him to the great city of Nineveh, where Jonah would later deliver God's word of repentance. And he reigned there for 400 years. It's funny because 400 is equivalent to gematria of the letter Taf. Taf means sign. I mean, that's not what Taf means, but the mark of the Taf, it means leot, as in a sign. Being a living witness to all the great things that the Lord, the mighty God of Abraham, of Isaac, and of Jacob, had done to Egypt. If there was hope for Pharaoh, there's hope for anyone. So don't cry, dry your eye, and go and ask God just why you are where you are. Do you want to live or do you want to die? Do you want to walk or do you want to fly? Then sing. Then Moses and the children of Israel sang this song to the Lord, Az Yashir, now and then, in the end of days. This right here, this is the song. And they spoke, saying, I will sing to the Lord, for very exalted is he. A horse and its rider he cast into the sea. Well, that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. It went by pretty quickly, I think. Anyway, thank you all for joining me, as always. Have a wonderful rest of the week. Have a Shabbat Shalom, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye.